11 races done, 11 races left. We're exactly halfway through the 2022 Formula 1 season, so what better time to do a half-season driver ranking? My name is Cameron Smith and welcome back to GPblog. This ranking is simple, taking into account driver performances relative to the machinery they're in. How well has each driver done so far in 2022? We've ranked each driver from 20 down to 1 to decide who's performed well so far this year and who needs to up their game in the second half of the season. Of course, this is how the Drivers' Championship standings look after 11 races, with Red Bull's Max Verstappen leading the way ahead of title rival Charles Leclerc, while Williams' Nicholas Latifi brings up the rear. But how do the drivers stack up in our ranking? 20th, Nicholas Latifi. The Williams driver is 20th in the standings and is one of only 2 drivers yet to score a point this season, the other being Nico Hülkenberg, who stepped in for Sebastian Vettel at the start of the season. Latifi has had several crashes and has quite frankly been miles off the pace of his Williams teammate Alex Albon. Sorry Nicky, but you're plumb last in our half-season ranking. 19th, Lance Stroll. 19th in our ranking is the driver 19th in the standings, but I promise that theme doesn't continue, don't worry. Lance Stroll is a very talented driver. He scored pole position at Turkey in the rain back in 2020, and don't forget his stellar F3 season in 2016 that saw him score 507 points, 243 more than George Russell. He jumped up to F1 the next year, but this season he's been poor. He's been knocked out in Q1 on 8 occasions and has just 3 points to his name. Vettel, his teammate on the other hand, has 15. 18th, Daniel Ricciardo. He's 12th in the Drivers' Championship, but Daniel Ricciardo features down an 18th in our ranking after a really poor start to 2022. The Aussie is still clearly not comfortable in his McLaren. He has quashed rumours linking him with an exit from the team, but with 47 points less than teammate Lando Norris so far, he's not what McLaren need if they're to beat Alpine to 4th in the Constructors. For such a talented driver, he's had a bad 11 races, with only 4 point scoring finishes, one of which came in the Imola sprint race. 17th, Yuki Sonoda. The Japanese driver has improved this year for sure, but AlphaTauri have taken a major step backwards and it's hard to fairly judge their drivers. He's only 5 points behind Gasly in the standings, but there's been nothing to write home so far for Yuki Sonoda this year. 16th, Pierre Gasly. As mentioned with Sonoda, AlphaTauri have endured a very average season so far. They've pretty much barely featured on our TV screens and are typically outside the top 10 on most occasions. Pierre Gasly was at the top of the midfield last season, but his 5th place at Baku has been his only highlight this year. That result is pretty much the only reason he's above his teammate Sonoda. But a pretty disappointing start to 2020 for Gasly, who punted Vettel off at Austria and has continued his sprint race struggles. 15th, Yongguan. Yongguan is actually a really hard one to rank. On one hand, he's impressed with several point scoring finishes, his qualifying pace looks decent, and he's been unlucky with retirements. In fact, if it weren't for his 4 retirements, he probably would have featured higher in our ranking, but we can't rank based on what ifs. On the other hand, he's 41 points behind his teammate in an Alfa Romeo car that looks pretty racy. Overall, a solid start to life in Formula 1 for a driver who had questions to answer after spending 3 years in F2 without winning the title. 14th, Sebastian Vettel. The 4-time world champion has been in the news plenty this season, but mostly for off-field actions, with his run-ins with the FIA arguably the most noteworthy thing to happen to Vettel this year. It's a shame because he's actually been pretty decent, dragging a poor Aston Martin car to 4 point scoring positions, including 6th in Baku. 13th, Mick Schumacher. Mick has ended the first half of the season with a bang. His first ever F1 points finish came in a good drive at Silverstone and he was truly excellent around the Red Bull ring. However, that shouldn't totally cloud over the fact that for the majority of the season he has been slower than Kevin Magnussen, who wasn't in F1 last year. If his form continues, however, then I expect him to feature much higher up come the end of the year. 12th, Alex Albon. Like Vettel, Alex Albon has been clear of his teammate and has put his Williams car in places it shouldn't really be on multiple occasions. Other than his 18th place finish at Spain, he's finished 13th or higher in every race he's finished and scored 2 points finishes, which is a great achievement given Williams are probably the slowest team on the grid. 11th, Fernando Alonso. Fernando is in the 4th or 5th quickest car this year, and in all honesty, he could have done a bit better. Of course, it's Fernando Alonso, and he's pretty much always impressive, but he's 23 points behind his teammate Esteban Ocon, which might come as a bit of a surprise. He certainly have been hoping for better. His P5 at Silverstone is the standout. 10th, Kevin Magnussen. On his return to F1 and his return to Haas, K-Mag has been a surprise this year. He was up to speed right from the get-go and has been consistently quicker than Schumacher this year. He's 11th in the Drivers' Championship with 22 points and features 10th in our list. 9th, Esteban Ocon. To be quicker than Fernando Alonso is no mean feat and just shows how talented Ocon is. The Frenchman had his doubters in his early career, but I for one have always liked him as a driver and he's been excellent this year. He's P8 in the championship and as mentioned earlier, he's scored 23 more points than Alonso. He's also finished in the top 8 in 7 races so far. As the French would say, bien fait, Esteban. 8th, Carlos Sainz. Now this may seem slightly harsh, but I'm judging this on how well each driver has done relative to the machinery at their disposal. Therefore, using that criteria, Carlos Sainz hasn't quite done as well as the Ferrari he's driving suggests he could have done. All you need to do to confirm that fact is see the gap between himself and Charles Leclerc. Sainz has had 2 more DNFs than his teammate, but Australia was completely his fault, and he has crucially suffered issues in qualifying too. His win at Silverstone felt like a long time coming, but that only happened because of Ferrari's blunder that cost Leclerc a certain victory. More to come from Carlos, one hopes, because his pace hasn't been close to his teammates all season long. 7th, Valtteri Bottas. Deemed not good enough for Mercedes, but we all knew Valtteri Bottas was still a very quick driver, and he's proven that at Alfa Romeo. His season has slightly tailed off over the past few races, but he's miles clear of Zhou in the standings and has dragged his team to P6 in the Constructors so far with 6 top 8 finishes. 6th, Lewis Hamilton. The 7-time world champion now has 4 podiums to his name in 2022 after securing 3 and 3 from Canada, Silverstone and Austria. He's been a little unlucky with safety cars throughout the year, but he hasn't quite been on par with new teammate George Russell in terms of points this season. The pair have been pretty evenly matched in terms of pace, but purely due to being an established member of the team with so many championships to his name, he probably should be beating Russell. Still, a pretty decent start to 2022. 5th, Sergio Perez. Still a way off Max Verstappen, but closer than last year is how Sergio Perez's 2022 can be assessed. Just 1 win to his name is slightly disappointing, and he's probably a little fortunate to be 3 places higher than Carlos Sainz in all honesty, as they've both performed the role of number 2 driver well. That's about all I can say for the Mexican. 4th, Lando Norris. The best driver in the midfield, end of discussion. Lando Norris has now proven himself to have been right up there in the midfield for 3 seasons now, and he's arguably been better each year. McLaren aren't as quick as they were in 2021, but Norris is still doing business. He's the only driver outside the top 3 teams to score a podium this year and has smashed Ricciardo again. P4 in this ranking is a fair assessment, I think. 3rd, George Russell. First season at Mercedes? No problem. George Russell has thoroughly impressed and has been on Hamilton's pace from the off. Pretty impressive for someone whose only F1 experience before this season has mostly been languishing down the bottom. Hamilton may well beat him come the end of the year, but Russell has been excellent so far. 2nd, Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc should be winning this World Championship, but because he's not, I can't justify him having a better season than Max Verstappen so far. Either through reliability or strategic errors, Ferrari have cost him wins at Spain, Monaco, Baku and Silverstone, which would have totally eradicated the deficit he currently has to Verstappen. Leclerc has quite simply been sensational, to the surprise of nobody, I must add, but he just misses out on top spot in our ranking, pretty much only due to his team costing him, which is ultimately out of his control. 1st, Max Verstappen. Top of the standings and top of our ranking is Max Verstappen. Leclerc has a really strong case for this place, but P1 in the Drivers' Championship deserves top spot in our ranking. Solid and consistently quick, Verstappen looks a good bet for defending his world title, although Leclerc will have something to say about that. There's not much more to say about a man with 6 wins in just 9 race finishes. Well done, Max. That's our ranking of the 2022 F1 drivers at the exact halfway point of the season. What do you make of it? Let me know in the comments section down below and tell me how you would rank the drivers instead if you disagree with me. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.